Hi, Mr. C here, and we're going to do some guided reading with the Read at Home Level 4A. This one's called Looking After Gran. So we're going to do a picture walk first, talk about each picture. Then for the second part, I will read aloud to you. You can check and see if your pictures matched what the story talks about. Third time through it, we'll do an echo read. I read first, then you follow along. And then the last time gives you an opportunity to do an independent read. Remember, you can pause this video at times in order to help you talk more about the pictures or in order to stay longer on a page that you're trying to read. All right, let's get started. All right, this one's Read at Home is called Looking After Gran. We're just going to do a picture walk through this story. Looking After Gran. Take a look at this double page. What do you see happening in the pictures here? All right, let's take a look at the next page. What's happening here with Gran and Floppy? Now what's happening here in this picture? What do you think Floppy's thinking? What's happening in this page? What's happening here? Where are Gran and Floppy now? What do you think Gran is doing? What's happening in this page? What's happening over here in this page? Talk about what you see happening here. Where is this? What's happening now? Now what's happening? What's happening in this page? And what's happening here? What do you think's happening in this page? What kind of store is this? What's happening in this page? And what's happening here in this page? Here are some questions you might want to try and answer about the pictures you saw. Why didn't Floppy like going on Gran's motorbike? Why did Gran leave Floppy with her motorbike? Gran told Floppy to stay. Why was he right not to stay? And what animal would you like to look after for a day? Okay, we're going to go back through the book for a read aloud. Got my trusty yellow marker. Let's see what happens in the story. The family was going away. "Look after Floppy," said Dad. Gran liked looking after Floppy. She took him for lots of walks. She threw sticks for him to chase and balls for him to catch. Gran had a motorbike. It was bright red. "Floppy, jump in," said Gran. Gran put on her crash helmet. "Where are we going?" thought Floppy. Soon they were zooming into town. "Isn't this fun?" said Gran. "Not for me," thought Floppy. At last Gran stopped. She parked the motorbike on the sand. "Stay here, Floppy," said Gran. "Look after the motorbike. I'm going shopping." Gran was away for a long time. The tide started to come in. A wave splashed the front wheel. Then a wave splashed the back wheel. Gran has parked too close to the sea, thought Floppy. I must find Gran, thought Floppy. He ran into town as fast as he could. Sniff, sniff, went Floppy. He could tell where Gran had been. She had been in the butcher's shop. Yum, bones, thought Floppy. Get out, yelled the butcher. No dogs in here. Floppy ran back into the street. I must find Gran, he thought. Sniff, sniff, went Floppy. Gran had been in the bread shop. Get out, yelled the baker. No dogs in here. Floppy ran back into the street. I must find Gran, he thought. Then Floppy saw Gran. She was in the hat shop. Floppy ran in and barked. Get out, said the lady. No dogs in here. Come on, Gran, thought Floppy. Floppy ran out of the shop. Gran ran after him. Come back, called the lady. You haven't paid for that hat. Floppy ran back to the beach. Gran puffed after him. Oh no, my motorbike, shouted Gran. She ran into the sea and pushed her motorbike out. Well done, Floppy, said Gran. You saved my motorbike. Gran spoke to Mum. I'm not looking after Floppy, she said. He's looking after me. Okay, we're going to go through the book a third time. This time it's going to be an echo read. Remember, Mr. C reads first, and then it's your turn. Let's start with the title. Looking After Gran. Your turn. Okay, Mr. C first, then your turn. The family was going away. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Look after Floppy, said Dad. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Gran liked looking after Floppy. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. She took him for lots of walks. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. She threw sticks for him to chase and balls for him to catch. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Mr. C's turn. Gran had a motorbike. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. It was bright red. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Jump in, Floppy, said Gran. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Gran put on her crash helmet. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Where are we going? Thought Floppy. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Soon they were zooming into town. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Isn't this fun? Said Gran. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Not for me, thought Floppy. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. At last Gran stopped. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. She parked the motorbike on the sand. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Look, stay here, Floppy, said Gran. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Look after the motorbike. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. I'm going shopping. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Gran was away for a long time. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. The tide started to come in. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. A wave splashed the front wheel. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Then a wave splashed the back wheel. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Gran has parked too close to the sea, thought Floppy. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. I must find Gran, thought Floppy. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. He ran into the town as fast as he could. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Sniff, sniff went Floppy. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. He could tell where Gran had been. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. She had been in the butcher's shop. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Yum, bones, thought Floppy. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Get out, yelled the butcher. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. No dogs in here. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Floppy ran back into the street. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. I must find Gran, he thought. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Sniff, sniff, went Floppy. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Gran had been in the bread shop. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Get out, yelled the baker. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. No dogs in here. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Floppy ran back into the street. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. I must find Gran, he thought. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Then Floppy saw Gran. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. She was in the hat shop. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Floppy ran in and barked. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Get out, said the lady. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. No dogs in here. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Come on, Gran, thought Floppy. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Floppy ran out of the shop. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Gran ran after him. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Come back, called the lady. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. You haven't paid for that hat. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Floppy ran back to the beach. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Gran puffed after him. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Oh no, my motorbike, shouted Gran. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. She ran into the sea and pushed her motorbike out. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Well done, Floppy, said Gran. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. You saved my motorbike. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. Gran spoke to Mum. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. I'm not looking after Floppy, she said. Your turn. Mr. C's turn. He's looking after me. Your turn. Okay, part 4. This time you get to do an independent read. Start with the title. Remember, you can pause the video at any time when you need more time on a page. You can rewind the video and watch it over and over and practice over and over until you can read through the whole book from beginning to end with no help, no mistakes, and your reading voice is the same speed as your talking voice. All right, great job.